All right, I am here with the infamous, before the team infamous, Mike Hinman, the one and only. He is known to be a tyrant on and off the field, but if you're friends with him, he's the biggest ally you would want in paintball. Mike Hinman, what's going on?
How you doing, brother, man? Good to see everybody. Good to see you, like always.
It's good to see you. Mike, you have one of the craziest reputations in paintball. You're known as one of the best minds, best team builders, and also one of the most loving guys in the sport to the players you house. You've done a lot for the game with your league, and we're going to get into all that. But you've also been a tyrant in the game. You've been known to have full-on brawls. You've been known to really dominate people with your intensity, even the players on your team, and beat them into submission, so to say. So let's start right from the beginning. How did you start in paintball? And give me your story on how we got to where we're at as a player.
Started in paintball, I think it was back in 94, 95. My dad and I we're from San Diego, born and raised, and we were out in the mountains shooting real guns. My grandfather was a gunsmith. My family owned a gun store, liquor store, and we were just out shooting guns like two old boys will do, right? And randomly, my dad we were driving up a country road, one lane mountain road, and there was a guy walking down the road, and my dad was a complete gypsy in his life, and he recognized the guy. Started, mile down the road, he turns around, he's like, I got to go see if it's him. So pull back, we got AKs in the back, all kinds of guns. I mean, I'm not talking like fully auto or anything, but, some machinery, right? And it's a guy that he knows, and he's caretaking a paintball field named Wild Woody's out in Julian, California, which is best known for apple pies. And we ended up living there for a while, playing paintball. I mean, it was in the woods, 10-man days, 2,500 round cases. And, we were hooked, man. Like, we literally, living at the field, we played 52 weekends a year, snow, hot, fire, didn't matter. We played because, we're addicted, right? Like, when you get into this and you're an extremist and you like really go in on something, that was the first taste, and I ain't never looked back since.
And Mike, I obviously grew up knowing you because you would be with the Bushwhackers at SC Village. So I got to see multiple sides of you. Most people that don't know is you were actually a really dominant player. When you were on the Bushwhackers, you were part of an elite Southern California crew with Ron Kilborn. You went to Aftershock, yeah, with Mike Paxson, who's another legend, SC Alex and all these guys, which were like local living legends. If you played at SC Village, these guys were there Friday, Saturday, Sunday in the dirt. And you grind and you played and you were always about paintball, but you were never this dominant guy then, even back then as a player. Everybody knew you as a no nonsense type of guy, but you didn't have this reputation as being like the guy, like the Don Corleone or the Michael, Corleone of paintball, where it's like just you will go kill someone if you need to kill them, and you will go damage people if you need to damage them, and you will go steal players if you need to steal them. And it gave you this reputation that everybody was fearful of you, but it gave you this crazy ability to build teams. And you were taken so serious, and then all of a sudden, next thing we know, you became a player. You were on Dynasty, you were on Aftershock, you started playing on all the biggest teams. How was the Dynasty experience?
I mean, Aftermath doesn't exist without Dynasty, period, right? Like the original Aftermath jerseys, I think it's the City one or whatever, Dynasty's on the chest. That's just paying respect to those dudes, because while other teams were trying to steal Mouse, or did steal Mouse, did steal Marcelo, went after all of our talent that we had, Dynasty allowed it to really flourish, and they played us all the time. Well, I was part of Dynasty, but there was a really good synergy. And, anybody can say what they want. You can love Dynasty, but listen, man, without those guys, Mouse, Rainey, like all of those kids that came from the original squad were allowed to exist under their umbrella. While teams like the Ironmen, and there's no issues now. Dave Youngblood and my dad used to work there as a machinist as well. We're very good friends, but the Ironmen have poached my players for decades, while Dynasty really never did that. And we kind of have an unwritten handshake rule, not going against each other's players. So
and it was great too, because you obviously always had the most insane practices, which a lot of people don't know as well. Like SC Village, it would be Aftermath would be setting up the field, taking down the field, getting ready. Dynasty would come in, smash, you guys would smash, and then everybody would go home and it'd repeat 52 weekends. And it's like you were that guy that I want to say you were one of the first to be like, you and Ron Kilborn, to be like, come play with us and grind with us, earn your spot. We'll have 50 guys. We know the 7 we're taking to an event, but I will build my community. And, we have to give you praise and give you your flowers for that. What was it like playing on the team of Dynasty as a player?
It was so above my time that now that I've, had time to not play, decade to not play or whatever, however long it's been, I sit back and listen to the things that Oliver said or Alex said, or, Yosh is the silent Bob of the group. It would really help sometimes if he spoke, because I think people would listen, but he didn't a lot on the team. Ryan, I sat there, and I always tell this story, right? Those guys would talk to each other in a way that I deemed disrespectful, right? And, I would think to myself, like, man, if you talk to me like that, I'm going to take you out in the hallway and we're just going to get it. I'm not saying we're just going to handle it as men and we're going to come back because I don't want to be spoken to. And I'm not speaking to you like that.
Yeah.
But what I didn't realize in my immaturity at the time, I was 20, 30 something, but I was still immature, is they just didn't have a lot of filter between them. And it was like, Bear, listen, like, you fucked up, or Mike, you cost us money in this business, but there was no sugarcoating it. It was very direct to the point, because it was a level of professionalism, right? No different than the football game that's on right now. The quarterback throws a pick and somebody's going to look at him and be like, dude, that's on you, man. Don't blame that on the coach. You're the idiot who threw it into double coverage and got picked. So something I learned there was the ability to just, own, and it's part of growing up and just being an adult, just owning it. And those guys, I say this often, right? Like, I don't bother Oliver out where he's at, but I think about some of the things he said, boost, all these things that O said. And I really just kind of sit back and smile to myself, right? Like, because he really was so far ahead of his time that here I am a decade, 2 decades later, dealing with younger players and using a lot of the principles that I learned there to make Aftermath. Listen,
got it.
Aftermath is not that much different than what Dynasty does.
Yeah,
listen, they're winning championships, they're winning events, that nothing to do with the success part of it.
But
I didn't look at the Dynasty thing from inside and be like, God, this is a horrible fucking team. These guys don't know what they're doing. It's like, man, this is how it needs to be. There's no politics here.
Got it.
And this happened to be that the core of those guys, they didn't need politics. But as other guys got long in the tooth, they got pushed out because it was a wolf pack mentality and the best guys played. So I learned a ton, and I'm forever thankful to them. I'm the owner, coach, whatever of Aftermath, and that won't stop. But I'm telling you, if Dynasty ever called and said, hey, we need help. Marcelo and I were talking today. We were at ASG today playing ball. Or he's playing, I'm out coaching kids, my son, all these guys. And we're talking about weekends of practice. And I said, man, you can always come. If I got 4 teams coming and you want to come, motherfuckers move out. Like, Dynasties, like, we just have an unwritten, it's a brotherhood, right? Like, it really is. If I see those guys at Cracker Barrel, I'm buying their dinner, like, they're just good dudes. And, you break everybody's balls on that team, give Ryan a hard time, but the game would not be the same without them. And that Dynasty rock thrown into those waves are being felt for decades. And, anytime you ask or somebody asks, who's better, Kobe or LeBron or MJ, it's an incendiary topic, right? Like, because some Bear is better, Mike's better, whatever. But for people to not realize how great Dynasty has been for this industry, there'll never be anybody like Dynasty.
No. And I think anybody who looks at that can understand that from a business level and a professional level. They have put in the time to make pro paintball be legitimate. And that's the hardest part to point out to people, that like, hey, these big brands didn't want to come in and mess with ML Kings. No one knows who ML Kings is. They deserve to go play in the MXLBL in Tijuana. Like, they should be down south and get better and then come up like Latin Saints. They shouldn't be in the pro division. Like, Dynasty legitimized pro paintball in a way where there was a story and there was someone to talk about. And me always being on the business side as much as I could, me and my dad have always looked at that in the same light. And you could appreciate it because look at how your camp is operating. I think it's very evident that you operate with this unity of, hey, let's build a core and everybody could practice with us and there is no sugarcoating and we're going to go to the event with the best team. That brings me into Cow Jam. Back in the day, we used to have a Cow Jam event at SC Village. It was a 7-man, a 5-man, a 3-man, a 10-man, and a woods ball league. It was like the modern World Cup, so to say. It was all these different divisions, 300 teams. It was put on by Geo, my dad, of course, at SC, and there was a couple of Hollywood Sports Park. SC Village 7-man, the first pro one, when I believe it was Miko just came over from Russian Legion and was living in SoCal. There was a lot going on, and all these teams put in a pro team. You said, hey, let's get Rodney Squires, Maximus Lundquist, Brian Cole, Kenny Rosenberg, myself, you, and Mini Mike, and you said, let's go play. So my dad gave us paint, and we went to go play. You put together a game plan with CP Dan and Rodney. You guys closed out the game. Me and Brian got with Riley Sullivan at the time. I think he was on Bob Long's Assassins or something. And you basically single-handedly like smashed Ironman in the finals, right? And they were going nuts, and Dai was there, and everybody was upset that our little throw together team beat them, and they were like wanted to beat me up or something. Do you remember that story?
Vaguely. I mean, I've definitely been in a couple of brush ups throughout my career, and maybe too many hard hits to the big head. But I do remember that story, and I remember, I mean, there was always chaos at a Cal Jam, right? But yeah, it was definitely one for the memory books.
Do you think that paintball still needs these type of events once a year that brings the entire community together? Do you think we're past that?
No, I mean, World Cup, we need World Cup, right? Like, we need the teams from down south, South America, Europe. That all makes sense. But one-off events make a lot of sense, right? Like, one-off events like Cal Jam were not created as a profit center. They were created as a promotional center. And where I think, and I run a league too, this is not some thinly veiled, if I had an issue, I'll call somebody out because I fear nobody in the sport. But we need people to run one-off tournaments where they put their heart and soul, like 10-man days. Vegas, Southern California was Dai. That was Dave's responsibility. And he put his best foot into that one event. Rennick did Chicago, the Gardeners, Philly, but everybody did their one thing a year and you put it together. Now we're kind of at a point where, people want to run the world and the competition's not a good look from a business standpoint. And I understand that side of it too, right? Like, nobody wants to give up the golden goose that they're used to holding on to. But in any industry here in America, like, competition's a good look, you know what I mean? And for me, we've had the UPL out here and other regional leagues. I've outlasted them all, but they have all taught me something in the process, right? So yeah, I do think and not just Southern California, it's Texas, it's Florida, it's Chicago, Midwest. Used to be the second largest event in the circuit for PSP, and now it's no longer. That Northeast section is really good. Northern California, Dave Baines and all those guys up there, like, I don't go up there, and there's some odd feelings with some of us. But I mean, Northern California, Arizona is blowing up. Phoenix Rising has 20,000 bazillion. I mean, my event sold out in like 20 minutes yesterday, 100 and some teams, actual X-ball teams. Phoenix Rising is just like, there's tons of them. So yeah, I do think there's, if I play at SC Village or I play at ASG now and you play at SC Village and we're 30 miles away, we don't see each other much. Might as well live 500 miles apart. And I think it's good to get the community together because, a small percentage of this is about playing paintball, and a large percentage of this is the experience of us all being friends and going out at night and getting the limo in Vegas. And
those experiences, 100%.
Going to plead the fifth on the rest of that night, but that's the look on your face says it all, because the chaos we get into.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's just the fun part of it, right? Like,
that's what gives paintball that vibe. Like, I think that story is what I always get mad about at Go Sports. It's like, I love Go Sports. I think what they do is the most beneficial thing to paintball, giving us this outlet, but they do it so, completely wrong. Like, you got these guys telling their war stories for the last 20 years. It's the same nonsense. I don't have anything against Matty Marshall. I just think it's time to have a fresh new look, and we need to look at paintball in a way like, hey, we don't build any camaraderie on social because we don't interact with people. We don't have a social as a community because we don't really push social media as a sport because our sport's just so disorganized. And then the one outlet we do have, we build no stories, we build no characters, we build no storytelling events. We should have an Ultimate Fighter paintball show by now, building a new team every year in the NXL, but no one wants to work with it. I think, honestly, the best thing we have in paintball right now is Tom Cole, and I say that unbiasedly because at least he cares.
Yeah, well, I mean, Tom's in a no-win position too, right? When you're the guy leading the
Yeah.
train, the wherever this is that we're heading, every decision he makes, it could be like Lane. I'll just use Lane Wright. Like Lane Wright from the PSP would slow the rate of fire, add a new bunker, and man, people wanted to put him on the stake. Like they wanted to light him on fire and be done with it. And then 2 events later, they're like, man, that's the greatest fucking idea ever. This, sliced bread, penicillin, like this shit works. You know what I mean? Like they're praising him. And Tom's in a no-win position, like no matter what he does, there's 20 voices telling him
Yep.
he's wrong. Tom and I talk here and there, right? I think
Yeah.
there's a mutual respect between us.
I think
And
guys like you too, just to make it clear, there's a respect between everybody at the high level. Just because you put this much time into paintball, we have to love each other. Like we're all in this together. If you've been around this long, you become my friend. You become my ally. We're no longer adversaries. We're no longer enemies. We have to work together because the industry is so small. Mike, going into MPPLs, you had Aftermath, and you had this sense of like community where it sort of was the original, like not gang. I don't want to be like that affiliation or be too much with it, but it was a very tight knit family. It's what a lot of teams wanted. Like Ironman had the bloody knuckles thing, and they had these big boys, and they had the Paxton and the Cubas, but you had 30 little minions. Mouse was a $110 with wet, clothes on. Like they were kids, but they lived and died for that team. And it was truly a team that everybody wanted to be a part of. We played at an MPPL. We almost got in a huge fight at the end of the event. Me, you, my dad, you had Mini Mike, you had 30 guys behind you. I'm sitting in the parking lot with my Naughty by Nature boys with Penguino. I got all the Mexican guys yelling at your guys speaking Spanish and English. It was almost a huge 30-on-30 brawl. They brought their boys. They're now the Latin Saints. How did you build this chemistry? And do you look back at it and say that was the healthiest thing? Or do you look back at it and say, damn, those are a lot of fights we probably didn't need to get in? Like, how do you look at that now going into this new Aftermath season?
I mean, the sport's changed since then, right? Like, listen, Mike Fontaine, Wedo, all those OG dudes we grew up at SC Village with, like, hands got thrown. I'm not promoting that happens all the time. I don't think anybody should ever be victimized in any way, shape, or form. But if two men, you and I, decide we want to go square up with each other, for some people, you may not be able to understand that. But for other people, the Viking mindset, they may want to go do that. And I mean,
we had a lot of issues, and I think I was a young kid, so I always had this big head, very overly confident. So if anybody on your team told me anything, I'm pushing them, we're shoving. And I never cared. I was like, let's go. I never tried to use my dad contrary to what people believe. I was like, let's get it then, So I think that we always had that mutual respect for each other too,
Totally. Well, I mean, there's the moment, right? I mean, no different than an NFL game. Guys are getting after each other, and I'm sure most of those dudes are at the club later on or whatever, off-season Vegas, seeing each other. They don't hate. I mean, a couple guys hate each other, and that always happened. But no, I mean, you look back, you talk about the intensity and the passion, for sure. Do I look back at my life and, think I could have done things differently? 100%. But to this day, I've got text messages from every dude that's still somebody in this sport that thank me for the intensity and the heart that Aftermath showed them and taught them. And it's just because, our society is evolving. It's changing, however you want to call it. And there's just, being soft is cool. I mean, listen, man, simply put, I want no problems with nobody. Like, I don't want problems. But if somebody wants problems, no problem. Like, we can get into that. Like, I'd rather be loved than feared. I don't want to be in that. But, when you're in the moment, it happens sometimes. And
it was this level of intensity that made pro paintball, those, and I go back to those SC Village days, there was 30 pro teams there, and everybody was trying to outshine each other every weekend. There was a level of intensity that, without a doubt, everybody could say Mike Hinman had a huge part in, because you brought that every weekend. And it wasn't a soft mentality. It was if you don't want to be here, go home. We love paintball. We want to be pro paintball players. And whether that means that we're going to be arguing all day or battling it on the field, we're going to do it. That going now into Aftermath, explain to me why you started Aftermath and how that ended up happening.
A lot of backstory to it, but I got on Dynasty 2 events before the end of a season. We lost to the Russians in Nemikol in that year. We went to World Cup, beat the Russians. What's that?
The year I got jumped.
Yeah. And we got home from that, and I was starstruck to be on Dynasty, right? Like I really, truly was, and
watched you.
It humbled me.
Sorry to cut you off. I watched you walk out of the Smart Parts booth because I was at the die booth getting that new DM4, and Dave Youngblood handed me that booth, and we're staring at you and Mini Mike leaving the Smart Parts booth with those freak insert kits. And you're walking around like a kid in a candy shop, and I'm like, "Yo, Hinman, what's good?" And we had already a small little friendship, and you're like, "Bro, this is amazing. I'm getting all this free stuff from Smart Parts," and I could see that level of enthusiasm. Like you were just happy to be there.
Yeah, no, and we get home that year, and all the guys disappear. Ryan's doing clinics, Oliver's going here, whoever else was on the team, Yosh, Waggies, like everybody's doing their own thing, and I'm back home. We had Great American Paint, which was Frazier's dad, Big Richard, rest in peace, that took care of us. And they said you can play as much paintball as you want. So for me, I knew in the darkness of my own thoughts where I was soft as a paintball player, because I wasn't the greatest paintball player, right? I had a lot of intensity, I had a lot of heart for it, but I needed to get better. Just because it's 10,000 hours to get to pro, it's 10,000 more hours to stay in pro. And I knew it needed to happen. Amen. So that's where I showed up to SC Village. And, I actually talked to, which is HK sales rep, Justin Schwartz, LJ, Jib. And I said, hey, man, if you know any kids, I want to start a kids team out here. I want to find young kids that want to play every weekend, 2-on-1s against me, 3-on-1s. And he literally goes, yeah, I know this kid. He goes, introduces me to him. His name's Alex Goldman, right? Dude's like 80 pounds, just tiny little kid. And I said, hey, man, we're going to be down on the X Hyperball field. You want to come get in? Come get some. 10 minutes later, Mouse comes, not making eye contact, moseying up like a little mouse. And that's how we started it. It was just somebody for us to be able to spar with all the time. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of teams. Legacy was around. LTZ wasn't far. There was a lot of local teams.
Yeah, I had my by nature team, and I would always play against you guys, and it was fun.
Totally. But, I wanted a team of guys that literally, if Danny Tiljack didn't make a practice or whatever happened, we had bodies we could use. And I wanted guys that fit the profile, my profile, which everybody's is different. That, the Aftermath way is grit, right? Like, there's been guys that have come through that aren't gritty human beings, and they don't last long. Like right now, I just got a text from my son. He's leaving the field with Thomas Kim, with Pinky, with Cody Woodruff, and they're just got done running drills, and they're going to be right back out there doing it again tomorrow. So that's what Joe Barrett, Tim Brusselbeck, they're out playing today. That's what Aftermath is. If you think I've already hit the top of the mountain and I'm on my way down, don't call me, because I'm going to expose you. And that's what it is. And again, when we get done, we go have dinner, it's totally different outside the net. But there's that 90 degrees difference. Once you get inside the net, once you get inside the octagon.
No, yeah. And it's been crew. We've watched you build many forms of Aftermath. I would say my favorite version of Aftermath was the year that you guys had Chris Lasoya and you were playing 7-man MPPL. It was 2008. It was the best year I ever had in the MPPL. So I obviously was always playing in the finals, watching you guys play. And we had a really cool friendship because we had a ton of training and practices against each other at Hollywood Sports that year that my dad built that arena for us to practice on. Basically me, our team, the Aftermath team, Dynasty, and the Ironman. And it was the year Oliver went to the Ironman too. So it was
at Hollywood Sports when Todd ran onto the field from us stretching and was like, yo, this mother going to the Ironman.
Yep. And it
we're
was
all like,
yeah, it was a crazy year.
I hung out with the heads, right? The cue ball, Tyler, Todd, the black sheep on the Dynasty, the not so clean, squeaky clean guys. And we're all like, and he really right there said, I'm going to play with these guys and I'm going to be practicing against you guys.
Craziest thing to watch Oliver take off a Dynasty jersey, literally throw it in the trash, and Dave Youngblood walk on up and hand him the shield, and the whole world just like, what is and then they have to practice against each other all day at Hollywood Sports. I still have the video footage from that practice. I got to bring that up. But what was it like with Lasoya? Was he still in his prime? Was there, I know there's this story, this myth, or maybe it's a legend of a fist fight with you and him years ago. Like, tell me this Lasoya experience with Aftermath, because you guys did win, and it was an insane year for you guys.
Well, first of all, Chris is a great human being in my book.
Oh, he's one of the best.
Like myself, has probably taken a couple wrong steps that he knows that he probably shouldn't have. Sometimes, he's had a couple drinks. He might let emotions run wild. But first of all, Chris Lasoya is a lifelong friend, a true friend. Like when we get done, I love you and I love you too, man. Because if it's the last time we talk to each other, I want him to know he meant something to me. So let's preface the whole thing with Chris Lasoya is a real one. Like, he really is. But,
and that's for
everybody.
When
I was a kid, my dad was playing paintball, and we played on a team called Sick and Twisted. And Lasoya was guesting with the Marine team back in '98. I don't know, Camp Pendleton, when Russ Maynard had it. And some, tomfoolery went down, and our team cheated their team, and they came to talk trash. And so I remember the story going down. I'm 16, 17, 18, and my dad was a much bigger man than I am. And Lasoya pushed my dad and called him a fat old man. And when he went to step back or run away, my dad grabbed his ponytail and just hit him, and they went to the ground, and it started a absolute riot. And I mean, it was bedlam, hooligan. I'm going over trucks because my dad's at the bottom of the pile, right? I'll just start kicking people in the face. I'll do I don't care how long.
This is where Hinman was born. This is the dark you were born in, like Bane, and you came out. It all started right here with Lasoya.
I mean, it happened back then. So, it all gets separated. Nobody gets arrested, thank goodness, on Camp Pendleton. Lasoya, my dad, and a couple other guys get suspended for the year. And it was interesting because, back then, PCRI, the magazines, their names were listed. Hinman. It's not the most common. I don't know anybody else that's got it in the sport. So it was always my father's sins are my sins, and I'm willing to go to the grave. I'll ride for my dad to this day. He's passed, but whatever it is, I got him. You know what I mean? He's my dad. I mean, a man only dies one death, right? I'll take it. And I always kept an eye on Lasoya. You know what I mean? Not that he was going to just freak out on me, but you have this. It's too much, and I'm a kid, right? At the time I'm 18. I mean, I was maybe $160, $170, and I wasn't a big man, right? So I always remembered it, right? So then we get into the 10-man going into X-Ball, Avalanche. And, I go to the club a couple times. Again, full disclosure, I don't do any drugs. I've never smoked a cigarette. I don't do anything like that. But, they invite me to go out, so I'm going to go out and just sit there, drink some water, Red Bull, say, hey, what up? And Lasoya was always the coolest dude in the world with me. Him and Candy, great human beings. And I'm just like, this fucking dude has to remember,
Yeah, hey, I got you one.
So that year he comes over to Aftermath, and he's towards the end of his career, but he helped because he was an older guy. We had so many wild children on the team.
Why did you pick him up, though, to start with this? Why did you pick him up with that team of just young bucks?
Because why not?
Got it. Okay.
Chris Lasoya, baby.
Answer.
Chris Lasoya calls me today and says he wants to come play for Aftermath, and we'll show up to every practice. Come on out. Because he's going to teach the young heads.
And Chris Lasoya would do damage on these kids. He would split half the league's wigs.
Well, I tell you what happened is when you're having a bad day of practice and you can't win for nothing and you're just striking out and you put Lasoya in there, you still might lose, but somebody else's health insurance better be paid up because he's going to come split somebody's wig. You know what I mean?
Bro, that guy will anybody on the field. He does not care, dude. This guy is the best field awareness paintball's ever seen. Him and Oliver are up there.
So that year, we're glad to have him. The kids are glad to have him, the whole 9 yards. And, one day, and again, this has never been addressed, right? And again, I'm not trying to mess up the mojo, right? I don't want to say anything. And one day he out of the blue says, it was like that disagreement me and your dad had back in the day. And I'm like, you remember? Because I've been sitting on this one for a long time. And we laugh about it now, right? Chris and I have never had an FU between us. And it's just a mutual level of respect. But it was an interesting Chris story. And I think the next year he came back and then went to Hawaii for the finale and proceeded to dump a hopper of paint on one of the Hawaiian guys. I think it was the team, the Dogs. I played I'm 90s going into the 2000. And I think those dudes might have taken off on him too, because you don't want to mess around over there in Hawaii with some of them real ones. You know what I mean?
The stories I know of Chris Lasoya growing up and partying in Tampa, Mons Venus, and SC Village. That guy is one of the biggest legends the sport ever has. Hopefully we get him on a show next. You guys won Jacksonville. That was the first pro win you guys ever had as an Aftermath team, right?
Yep, beat the Ironman in the finals.
Yep, another Ironman loss. What was that feeling like going into the year or because then some things happened, right? Your team got kind of picked apart. The next year kind of You lost Bobby, you lost this guy, you lost that guy. What happened? You would think after you win, it's like finally they've made it, and now they're going to become the next dynasty, like everybody thought.
Yeah, but we say that now as 30 and 40-year-old dudes, right? Like we have that clarity. When we were young, you just didn't realize how great the lightning in a bottle could not be recreated.
Yeah.
Once you fall off the wave, you're never getting back on that wave. Yeah, we won. I mean, none of us really ever thought we could win. We didn't think we could always lose. It just, until you've won, you don't see it through the lens of winning. And yeah, I mean, just, back then the industry was a lot healthier. I got to imagine it was 4, 5, 10 times. There was way more money around. And, if you can't beat him, join him, right? And that's kind of what happened. I mean, again, it's not a shot at Diamond or Die, but they consistently fed off of our team because a lot of these pro teams don't have feeder teams. So when you need to replenish the well, you just go steal from somebody else.
That's kind of where paintball's at in today's time, where it's like you've constantly been building players for the last 20 years, and you're really good at doing this. You're really good at molding a player into not just being, I don't want to say physically capable of winning, because it's not like you're like a speed coach or something, but you bring this level of confidence. When I first met Mouse and we had like the little SC kids, and it was like Brandon Short and Marcelo and me, and I had like my little Bears cup, and like Mouse was a kid and you turned him into a man. Now I know he has a great dad and everything, but like he was not always this confident guy trying to headbutt Rainey because he thinks he's sweet. There was a point where Mouse wouldn't even say a word, and you could say whatever you wanted to him, and there's been a lot of scruffles with Mouse and Marcelo over the past, from parties to Halloween nights to actual events to playing on different teams to being on the same teams. What's your take on having to deal with Mouse, Rainey, and Marcelo at the same time when they were all on Aftermath?
Well, I mean, they had to deal with me too, right? Like, fuck, all 4 of us had to deal with each other. I mean, I was older, but I wasn't still probably not the most sane dude in the world, Like, when emotions get involved, it gets real out there. But, they all wanted to win, and I think it's really been a cool journey for all of us on our own path to be able, like we talked, and Marcelo was there today, and Mouse will be there tomorrow. I never once go to those guys and be like, hey, man, come on back. Dude, I'm happy just sharing the field with them, playing them against them, talking trash with them. Because at the end of the day, I love those dudes, like they're lifelong friends. And only when especially when you get into 40, you're like, fucking known this dude since I was 20, you know what I mean? And we've been through so many chapters of this life, and yeah, it was different. But it wasn't just them, Kenny Rosenberg, Ryan Beasley, rest in peace, Derek Janish, all the original Whisper, Compton Ray, like all those there was a lot of weird personalities. And that's something about team paintball that people have to understand. You and I right now can talk at a normal level because there's 2 of us. But when we put 10 of us into a room, we all got to take a little something off of it. Because if we all start talking, within a minute or 2, we're going to be screaming. Not because I'm screaming at you, because I got to talk over your dumb ass to get to talk to the other guy. But when you get 10, like in a business setting, when you have creative process going, like you do on a paintball team, you got to leave the ego at the door. And you got to just, when you have a valid point, make it. But don't let your ego make points. And, that's just something we all had to work on, and we had to adapt and learn to grow up together.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it makes sense. I mean, you dealt with all these guys. Your team getting picked apart. I know in this offseason, like at World Cup, there was some issues. I think one of the Impact guys were trying to steal one of your players, and they thought they were sweet, and everybody thinks they can like go around you. Like you're not going to know, and you're not going to find out, but eventually you do, and you put like a stop to it real quick. Why do these players, I don't know who it was, I think it was Mouse actually, or A-Rod or someone on Impact.
It was Spica.
Oh, it was Spica. Okay, so is it that these guys continuously try to press you? Why do they still try to poke at you when they know who you are and what you do? Why do they continuously try to take apart your team?
I mean, can't beat them, join them, right? Like, I mean, at the end of the day, it's tough, right? Like, Spica's a funny one. He moves to Southern California, lives in my house with my wife, my kids, lives for free for months until he can get on his feet. And then, when somebody higher up the food chain on Impact decides to say, hey, we want to go talk to Thomas Kim, instead of them calling Thomas Kim, they send one of their minions because you're just a rich dude's fucking lapdog.
Makes sense. I mean, you've always been one to kind of keep it real. So
what? True. Like what? I mean,
yeah.
Hold on. I lived in your
personally
house.
love Spica. I personally love Spica, so I obviously know he was probably sent in on that mission. But yeah, it makes sense. All these guys get sent on these missions, and they're trying to hold that 50, 70, 80 grand they make a year, and
20, 30, whatever. Yeah.
yeah, and they're like, I don't want to lose it. Whatever it is, I'll keep it. Whether I got to sell 20 die DMs or I actually get cash, I need this money. Going into this 2022 season, Latin Saints, a lot of talk. I'm hearing a lot of chatter on the internet about people saying this is the next championship team. This is the next dynasty. I've been hearing the next dynasty since I was a kid, 2001, wearing a dynasty jersey with the dynasty boys. There's not going to be another dynasty. Why is Latin Saints getting this praise when they haven't even played an event yet? And I still don't think they have a core player to lead the team. They just have a bunch of, weapons, but they don't have that nucleus yet to keep it all together. What's your thoughts on this?
I mean, first of all, I'm happy to see a team. They bought the Trade My Gun spot. I could look it up real quick. I'm going to guess 17, 18, 16, something place team. They bought that position, and they improved it. Do I think it's good to have a team from Mexico or any other region? Yeah, I love having the Russians here. I love having somebody from down south. I mean, we'd love to see the Tauntauns make it over, or, Nexus used to come over. I think all that's good. Tom Cole's been talking about that for a while. So I think that's great. Latin Saints, had they not picked up some guys, I mean, man, unless you're in that pro division, all these semi-pro teams think, oh, we're ready. Nah, dude, you're not.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, very few teams come out of there and become Sunday teams.
100%.
So
I don't think people
they had to pick up some guys. Listen, Silos, let's go through
Silos, Mouse. What is that going to do in the pro division together?
They just haven't announced Corey Hall yet.
Got it. Okay, so Corey Hall is the next big play.
Yeah, I mean, Mouse is a Mouse alone by himself, nothing to do with anybody else, is a cornerstone build a team on guy, hands down. Mouse will make, like a Mike Paxson or whoever, he will make everybody around him better. Mouse will show up and he puts the time in. Mouse puts the time in. So I think that was a good move. I think Silos is a gritty dude. If I got to go into a dive bar and it might get a little weird, I'm not worried about Silos running out the back door. We may not win, but he's going to stand shoulder to shoulder, toe to toe, and let them things fly.
It's good to know you have weapons.
A-Rod is a very well-rounded paintball player. Like when he played on Aftermath, he was the 2 weeks the layout came out that we have to digest the layout. Fran and Nikki from the Iron Men that run Victory Paintball Park would let him set that field up on Wednesday, and A-Rod would stay at their house all week and just work on shots. And A-Rod knew everything there was to know. So I think A-Rod will help a ton. I think he will help the guys around him become better players. And, if the Corey Hall thing is real.
Do they have what it takes? Do they have what it takes to be a top 4 team?
I mean, could they pull a top 4 off? Anybody can, right?
Consistent top 4 team.
It's going to be tough. I was speaking with the owner of the team last night, or we were texting back and forth. Yeah. It's a couple-year process.
Yeah.
Like, listen.
Prepared for it?
What's that?
Are they prepared for that?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to play the Heat weekend 2. I think weekend 1, they've talked to us and other people. I mean, if they get a good diet, first year of high school, you got to go through it, and you come back your sophomore year, and you're kind of like, hey, what's up, boys? I'm back. You know what I mean?
Got to go through it is the key. I think you hit the nail on the head. For a pro team to win, for a team to do well, you got to go through it, and you got to put in that time of suffering defeat, because you can't build a winning pro team your first year unless you're Oliver Lang and you're on the Ironman. That's probably the only one that I'll let go.
But I mean, you need adversity, right? Like it either breaks you or it shapes you. And I mean, speaking to Mouse, I've talked to A-Rod. I messaged Silos, just told him, congrats on the news. I try to do that with everybody around the league from top to bottom. Somebody retires off the 20th place team, I send them a, hey, good knowing you. Good if I give me a call. But I think they all have gritty people, and I'd be very surprised. I know Penguino and I know some of those guys, but I would be very surprised to see a team come out of Mexico that doesn't have some passion, heart, and fire. I don't think these are a bunch of white collar hanging out in the office, drinking lattes, heading to happy hour in the, in their Benzes after work. I think these are gritty human beings, and I think they're going to be happy to be here. Do I think there's going to be an adjustment period in there, yeah, every one of those guys that hasn't competed in the pro division at the NXL expects something, and they're going to show up in Orlando or wherever this first one's at in Florida, and they're going to get a dose of reality, and it's not going to be a bad thing. There's just going out on a date tonight. I think it's going to go this way. Fuck, didn't go that way. It went totally this way. You know what I mean? Things get weird. And I think for them, it's just going to be, it's a process. Yeah, a learning curve. I would
tell you this. I played for years with Pinguino, and my Naughty by Nature team was built off the TJ All-Stars. And you know this, and for 2-3 years, I played with these boys. We played all the MPPLs, 5-mans, and these guys have the most heart, the most loyalty. They are some of the top people you'll ever meet in your life. So
I
just don't know if that roster is going to be enough to pull it off.
I don't think we can anoint anybody the champion yet. I mean, not Impact, not Heat, not Dynasty, not Infamous, not X Factor.
Speaking of, how is Impact going to even do?
I mean, I'm sure Dave will do fine with it, right? Like Dave, Bart.
He picked up to replace Goldman and A-Rod, the two best players they had on their team.
I mean, I think one way you got to look at it is they weren't shorthanded to start with, right? Mm-hmm. Like they really weren't shorthanded. They already had heavy bodies. Like Rob Velez left at the end of the year more because he just wasn't getting a lot of playing time, and I think he wanted to go to Revo and get more spins. So in my opinion, for what it's worth, I think they already have a lot of bodies,
Got it. Okay, Mike, so going into 2022, I want to kind of get into the nitty-gritty of this, start talking about players. I want to know the ultimate debate. I think we lost Mike Hinman. Did we lose Mike Hinman? No, we didn't lose him. All right, Mike, here we go. We're going to wrap this thing up. Right now, going into the 2022 season, Marcelo Margot, Alex Goldman, which one's a better player all around going into this?
Both.
I mean, we got to pick one. It's for the beauty of the sport. People need to know these type of things.
I mean, I'll tell you who the world champion is, Marcelo Margot.
So going into the 2022 season, you think he has the edge over Mouse?
They play two different positions. Mouse is a attacker. Marcelo has played the 2-3 role. But I'll tell you what, he was out there today putting it on people, and I'm talking about scalping boys. Like he was up in the front putting in work.
Marcelo?
With the Dynasty, Marcelo. Mouse will be out tomorrow. Mouse had work today. But Marcelo was out there today in the front handling business. So, I mean, listen, and I'm going to answer every one of these, but anytime you put A against B, it's going to create division. And I love both those dudes. Give me either one. You pick one, I'll take the other one.
I think they're both even. I always ask everybody this question because I like to see where everybody stands, and it's good for paintball to have this type of talk. I think they're both great. I think they're both 100% players. Could it go either way? Yes. If I was building a team, I would rather build it around Mouse than Marcelo because a lot more players can kind of close out games better than getting kills, in my opinion. And Mouse can get you 3 to 4 kills any game at any time. All right.
Yeah, I mean,
Ryan Greenspan, Tyler Harmon.
If you're talking IQ,
yeah,
I don't know anybody smarter than Ryan. But if we're talking about my boy Tyler, I mean, I love both. Tyler played for me too. Great human being. We were going to call Tyler the week before he showed up with Dynasty to practice because he kind of was quiet for a little bit. And it was like, yo, let's get at him because I know he's a great dude.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you what, either one of them, team that they're on disappears or gets cut, every single team in the league is calling both those guys.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, they're two of the best players in the league.
Period.
Fedorov or Spica, who's a better player?
Fedorov.
Without a doubt. I mean,
Spica has an ability to be a great paintball player. He just has to do it. You know what I mean? He has to go. Kyle's a nice guy. You know what I mean? I think what he did was classless, but that's on him as a human being.
Did you guys?
I just told him they're nothing to squash. I'm not going to like drop him on his head or anything. Like, I wouldn't do that to you. If you want to do it to me, that's who you are.
Got it. Yeah.
If I see you in 20 years at the airport, I'm going to walk up to all my paintball friends out there. If we are not doing this anymore and say, hey man, how's it been? Glad to see you're still alive. You made it 20 more spins around the sun. How's life? But when you treat people like that, like daddy called and said, call Thomas Kim and like, come on, bro, stop. Fucking get out of here, dude. Like,
He's keeping it raw, rugged, and real. That's why you're on this podcast.
But why would you do that? Like,
yeah, I get it. I get it. Everyone's trying to keep their spot, and they're being that kid, you know. Dave Bain, Skinny K, which one's a better coach?
I mean, another tough. I mean, both of them are great coaches. I mean, Skinny Kevin's coach of the year, and listen, I love Skinny Kevin. Dave and I have had differences, but I respect Dave, and I have respect and love for his family. They've always been polite to me, but they're just in different places, right? Skinny Kevin took over the team that won World Cup the year before and then won World Cup again. So I'm not being negative, but did he really do anything special? You lost Tyler, but now you picked up Archie. I mean, again, Dynasty did what Dynasty's been doing. Dave, on the other hand, now has to keep a team focused. A lot of people believe that Impact guys have been underperformed. Is that Dave's fault? I don't know. Like, I think I see a lot of arrogance out of some of those players.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll tell you this. Mouse calls me after it was official, right? He got a lot of money. How much? I'll never repeat because it ain't my business.
I heard he got $150,000 for the year.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, he got a big chunk of it already. And when he called me and we're talking about it, I said, hey, man, you know, show Bart respect, first of all. And number two, are you happy? Like, are you truly happy? And he goes, yeah, man. I said, let me give you some advice for next year. Shake everybody's hand, say hi, smile at people. Don't walk around like you fucking got a loaf of bread up your ass that you're not trying to smash. Like, just be cool, man. You got paid. Be everybody's friend. Because last year you see those guys walking around and everybody's trying to mean mug and all this. And it's like, bruh, don't make me send a torpedo your way.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
this arrogance to them, and it is because they get 20 egos and 30 grand for the year, whatever it may be. And I don't know why they feel the need for that, but there is that one thing you can learn from Alex Frazier. He has so much class and treats everybody with so much respect. There's a reason why he's been winning for the last 20 years. And if these younger players can look at Alex Frazier as a role model, don't look at how he plays, don't look at how he practices, look at how he treats his teammates and the players that he's practicing against. So I've always been a big fan of him for that reason. Okay, Mike, going into this season one more time, I want to wrap it up on Aftermath. How do you guys look and how do you think you're going to do?
We were 8th overall last year, first year coming back. I think we can do better than that. You know, can our team make Sunday? I believe now we can. I think, you know, there's not as many good teams. I think we can make Sunday. Probably just jinx myself. But once you get into Sunday, anything's possible, right? It's like the Sweet 16, the NCAA dance. All I got to do is get in there and anything can happen. And you got to believe in yourself. And we got a lot of dudes that believe in ourselves. We got a lot of gritty dudes that, you know, come sleep at my house on my couch or on the floor. They're not prima donnas. So, I feel good. And you know what? I'm going to tell you this journey that we're on this year, everybody feels good about being in the car together, making this ride. And wherever we end up with it is where we end up with it. That's, you know, we look forward to it, right? I don't want to go hunt, fucking ground squirrels. I want to go after something that's going to kill me.
Yeah.
I want to challenge.
You've always been one to step up to the challenge. That's the perfect point. For a team like Latin Saints, I think they're doing what it takes to build a new pro team. You got to put some money up, get the best players, and build foundation. Teams like Dynasty are always going to be good because of the IQ and the core nucleus that they have. Wrapping it up, it's the last couple minutes, the Full Experience Podcast. Mike Hinman, you have built more pro paintball players, and you deserve that credit. The elite paintball players than anyone else I know. The Russians have done it a lot with young kids. I get it. And that camp I was a part of and what goes into them is insane. But from a Southern California perspective, there's no one better than you at what you do. For all these young coaches and all these young teams that watch this and players, what goes into trying to make that next step from D1, D2, semi-pro into a pro player? What goes into you as a coach looking at a player saying, this is what you need to have?
I mean, you got to have heart, you got to have grit, you got to have intelligence, like every step is tough. Some teams are great D3 teams, they never transition to 2. Some are great 2, never transition to semi-pro. I'm telling you, that step up, listen, I hope everybody makes the step. Mm-hmm. I do. And when you do, like when the Hurricane guys made it this year, I said, congrats to all those dudes. And I mean it. I'm happy for them. But just know it is the biggest step you're going to take in this sport. And it's difficult, man. It's going to be a rough one. And if, what does it take? The ability to win. I'm out there today, man. Every one of my dudes right now is probably taking some Tylenol from getting their heads cracked by me. My son included, But the difference is Marcelo finds a way to win. Mouse finds a way to win. There's no excuse for the losing. They might get shot, but they're not losing. And it's a mindset that you got to have. And, you know, the top guys are 1%ers, man. Like, they are the 1%ers of this sport. And you just got to, you know, excuses. Talk's still cheap, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
25 years of doing this, talk is still cheap.
Now,
and you know, it's still going to be cheap.
You have the podiums. You've done it. You've been a catalyst for so many pro teams to pick up and replenish their well, as you would say. And you've done it. You've been here and you haven't left. You're a tremendous asset to the sport. You're a tremendous asset to the league. You're a tremendous asset to the Southern California paintball player, you know, base. Because of you, they have a home that they can go to, and you're constantly giving people shots and bringing people up. You're not scared to mold a player, whether they leave you or not. That's on them, you know? So tremendous watching you over the years. Honored to be one of your friends. Excited for this 22 season and some great things we have coming up, especially with some Giant Party Sports stuff at our Dallas Park in Texas. So excited. Mike Hinman, thank you. The Full Experience Podcast. Good luck in Aftermath.
Always good talking to you, brother.
Later, bro.